Hello and welcome back to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks, back with James Black to review the weekend's action. There was plenty of high-scoring drama over the Premiership over the weekend, and we're going to review it all, and we'll hear from different Premiership managers and players over the course of the episode as well. We were at a few games over the weekend, so plenty of that content to come. We'll start in alphabetical order on the Saturday. There's 3 games on the Saturday, 3 on the Sunday. Before we do that, have a quick run through the scores. It was Hamilton 1, Dundee United 1. Hakeem Adofin again, rising highest for Accies to salvage a point for them after Lawrence Shanklin put Dundee United ahead. Got Livingston 2, St Johnstone 0. Fairly even game performance-wise, but again, St Johnstone's lack of cutting edge in front of goal really cost them. 2 goals in 2 minutes from Livy, Scott Tiffany, and the impressive Alan Forrest, sealing victory for Gary Holt's side. The other game on the Saturday, St Mirren 0, Kilmarnock 1. It's been a great week for Nicky Kabamba, and he finished that off with another winning goal off the back of his winning goal last week in his new DR Congo call-up, with the winner in Kilmarnock's 1-0 win over St Mirren. On the Sunday, it got a lot more high scoring, starting with the lunchtime kick-off at Fir Park, where Mullow's completely jaded team, according to Stephen Robinson, were thrashed by Rangers 5-1. The Rangers team looked impressive, but the Mullow team were clearly struggling with the effects of 4 games in 10 days. 3 o'clock kick-offs due to the European football earlier last week. Celtic 3, Hibs 0. Hibs have been impressive this season, but perhaps just a task too steep for them at this stage in the season at Parkhead. And Aberdeen returned to form against Ross County. It was 3-0, but by all accounts from those who were at the game and reporting on it, it could have been 6 or 7 for Derek McInnes' side. 2 Lewis Ferguson penalties and a Marley Watkins goal, sealing victory for the Dons. Right, quick fire through of the games, and we'll start looking at them a wee bit better now, and I'll bring you into it, James. Hamilton 1, Dundee United 1. Frustrating one for Dundee United, having been up for so long in the game, but Hakeem Adofin's turned into this goal-scoring phenomenon for Accies that he's really bailed them out at serious times this season.
Yeah, he's been absolutely vital for Accies this season. He's just making such a big difference for them. You know, looking at United's results in the last few weeks, so that's a real kick in the teeth for them. That'll be a real hard one for them to take. And it was a game they really needed to get 3 points, I felt. So it's going to be a kind of tough week for United going into Friday's fixture. But the international break coming up next week after that, they really need to get 3 points on the board.
I think it's an opportunity for them, but again, as we've said multiple times over the last 4 or 5 seasons, Hamilton just don't know when they're beat. At some points, they just grind out a result when they really don't have any right to, and it must be so frustrating for teams, because, and that's not a big at Accies, it's more just a fact of teams know they should be beating Hamilton, but for some reason Hamilton just have this unknown quantity about them that just doesn't want to be beaten. Anyway, Livingston 2, St Johnstone 0. I was at this game to watch Livingston. A decent performance from Livy, but St Johnstone, I mean, they had a couple of chances, but I don't know, there's just something not quite clicking up front. It's been a hard start for Callum Davidson in his time at St Johnstone so far, and Murray Davidson is refusing to pin the blame on the rookie manager.
You know, I've been building up for the last 3 or 4 weeks, so just getting back. Obviously disappointed with the results, so it's not about me. It's about the team, and disappointed like everyone else. And when you lose a goal, you've got to try and stay in the game, and for probably 10-15 minutes as a team, we weren't good enough. For 30 minutes to 45, and we go in with a mountain to climb with probably us having the best chances in the first half. There's nothing in the game when you come in here. We have to defend, throw-ins, corners, and I thought the first half an hour of that game, we done that. But when you lose a goal, it's so important that you stay in the game. And it's disappointing, as I say, we go in at half time and without Livingston up when it worked too hard, we're 2-0 down and got a mountain to climb. 8 out of 9 we've lost the first goal, and I've said it for the last 4 or 5 years, the first goal in this league's massive. It doesn't matter who you're playing, it gives the team something to hold on to, they can sit in. You know, if we go 1-0 up, it's a massive thing, so I don't think we've scored the first goal in any games apart from the St Mirren game. It's something we need to work on. We've got to be better in both boxes as a team. And yeah, it's plain as simple as that. To be honest, I've seen it so many times, but we just said in the dressing room there that the manager can't keep coming in and saying we're doing this right, we're doing this right. It comes down to winning games, and as a team we're doing things right in the training pitch, we're working away, but if we give away goals and we're not good enough in both boxes like we have been, as a team again, we need to defend better as an 11, we need to press the game better as an 11, and we need to attack the other box better as an 11. If we're not as good as other teams in both boxes, we're not going to win games. I don't think we're far wrong, but at the same time, I'd rather be standing here. I've been here in the past where I've heard opposition teams saying, "Use are rubbish, use are this and that," but we win games. I'd rather be standing here saying we got played off the park, but we won 1-0. So it's disappointing.
There was contrasting joy for Marvin Bartley of Livingston. Another decent performance from him in the middle of the park as his side got a big win, and he was delighted with his side's performance in West Lothian.
Definitely. I was just saying to Del there, I thought we had control of the game. They had probably 2 opportunities, but we defended well. Holtby's obviously headed one off the line, but I don't think they can have too many complaints of losing the game today. It definitely did. I think we played some good football at times as well. Something we probably don't get a lot of credit for, but we played good football at one end and we defended for our lives at the other. And that's something we've been talking about. Especially before this game, we needed to get better in regards to defending. And you go to Celtic Park, you score 2 goals, you still lose the game. So we have to look at ourselves as defensive players, and we did that today. We kept a clean sheet, so it was absolutely perfect. I'm not sure I give 110%, but it's one of those things, isn't it? People say, "I'll give 110%." I'll take 100, and that's what the boys did today. We know as individuals we're not great as individuals, but if we work hard as a team and we do our jobs, and what we've spoken about also this week is do your job and then help your mate next to you, because the back four as individuals do their job, we have a solid back four, and that's what we need to keep working on, and that's our mindset at this moment in time. Give 100% effort, and we're going to give the ball away at times, and we have to react in the right way. That's also something else we've spoken about, and we did that today.
A decent performance from Livy, but I think, they did well, and it was an all-round strong display, but I think the big thing for me from that game was how poor St Johnstone looked going forward. Again, they looked okay at the back, apart from the 2 minutes of madness in the sort of between 32nd and 34th minute. They look okay in midfield, they've got a lot of experience, but up front, it's really poor.
It's not been great at all, has it?
No, it's hard to defend. You don't want to be too critical of it, because the thing is they've got good players there too. Like Callum Hendry's a decent young striker. Stevie May, it's been a few years now since he's hit form, but has proven in the past can score goals. Michael O'Halloran has shown this season. The game away to Kilmarnock, he was brilliant, but you only get that performance once every 10 games for him, and they sort of need it much more consistently from him. And he's got a real problem. I think after the game he said, Callum Davidson said that he wouldn't be too concerned at this point because they're creating chances. But we've nearly, it's crazy to think we've nearly played the first round of fixtures. So it's once you get a good gist of where teams are going to be this season after these games. And I think the next couple of games could be really defining for St Johnstone. They really could be doing with a victory somewhere, not even just a victory, a good, comfortable victory somewhere along the line.
The big thing for St Johnstone for me just now is that they've tried to go for some continuity after Tommy Wright moved on at the end of last season, which is probably the right thing to have done. But it's just, for whatever reason, it's not clicking. They're still trying to do much the same things, but they're just not getting the results from it, both in terms of performances and actual results. So, I don't know, it's a hard one for St Johnstone in that. Does it get to a point, arguably sooner than it would for most clubs, a new manager, where they decide that they need to do something different? Because sometimes you do just get to a point, I feel, where doing the same thing over and over again, like regardless of it being a different manager or not, that sometimes you just need to kind of rip it up, start again, and go for something totally different. And I kind of fear that St Johnstone's getting to that point quite rapidly.
I think it's probably a bit premature for me anyway to start saying, perhaps they should do something different. But St Johnstone have got Celtic next, which again is a really tough task, and then the big one is after it's not really an international break for teams in the SPFL this time around, apart from the teams that have played in Europe this season. It's Betfred Cup games, but the next one in the league is away to Hamilton on 17th October. So that's the big one for me if they really need to be winning that one. But we'll be hoping maybe the Betfred Cup group stages will be decent for St Johnstone if they can get a couple of goals and a couple of wins. But alternatively, I suppose that could go the other way. If confidence is low and they do get beaten by a lower league team like they did last season, I think they were put out at the group stages of the League Cup last season. A repeat of that, and it could start to get really sticky for them. But I think they have shown decent signs. I mean, defence to midfield, as I've said, they are fairly decent, but it's up front where they've got the issues. Looking at other games on the Saturday, St Mirren 0, Kilmarnock 1. Again, St Mirren's bad run continues at the moment after their positive COVID test. Injuries, suspensions. Have not had an easy time of it, but it doesn't hide away from the fact 5 defeats in a row now for the Buddies, and Jim Goodwin has reacted after the game.
I thought we were in Kilmarnock's half for the majority of the game. The majority of the second half, and we just lacked a little bit of cutting edge in the final third. We got in some good areas, but we didn't put enough good balls in to give our strikers something to go and attack. The odd half chance that we did have, unfortunately, didn't fall kindly for us, and we weren't able to capitalise. So it's another defeat. It's really, really disappointing, the run that we're on after such a bright start to the season. But I've got every confidence that we can turn it around. As I said, we've got a really decent squad there. We've still got 3 or 4 very good players to come back from suspension and injury. And I think once we get our strongest team on the pitch, we'll turn the corner.
I mean, good win for Kilmarnock. They're picking up a wee bit of form. St Mirren again, similar to St Johnstone, really. I mean, they don't really seem to have much going forward here. I know Jim Goodwin spoke about that as well, about they're perhaps not quite found the attacking formula up front yet, but as well as that, crosses into the box are just real issues for St Mirren. I think it's maybe over 70% of the goals conceded this season have actually come from direct crosses into their box, and it's something they'll need to deal with quick because they're foot in the table, and whilst at this stage of the season it doesn't mean much, they really could be doing with getting a win very soon.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see Jack Annick back in the side for the Buddies at the weekend, but yeah, they really need to start turning things around quickly now. And I'm quite surprised just by the percentage of how many of their goals have come from crosses and what have you, because I mean, Joe Shaughnessy and Noad McCarthy have both kind of looked fairly decent under pressure teams. They've also got Marcus Fraser in their back four, who's he's no shy of a header or two. So it's a bit of a surprise that kind of appears to be where St Mirren's weakness is defensively. It's a surprise one as well, just being a Jim Goodwin side, because they tend to be fairly well set up at the back, fairly solid defensively. So something they really need to work on quickly. Although I can imagine that the turmoil of having different keepers in, a near constant change in defence in the last couple of weeks, it won't have helped much.
I think you mentioned that after the game, is that it's no coincidence to him, at least, that the first couple of weeks of the season they looked very good as when they had the same 11 starting every time, whereas since I'm pretty sure they've had at least 1 or 2 changes every week, which of course makes a difference at this early stage. It's a fairly new team he's got, given the amount of changes, especially to the back line that he's had, and like Sam Foley's had to drop into centre back, Ethan Erahon, who I think has actually been decent, but he's been drafted back into the squad again after a wee bit of time away from the club last season. And it doesn't get any easier for St Mirren as well. Pittodrie away next, and then they've got Motherwell after the run of League Cup games during the international break. So it's going to be tough for them, but they really could be doing with a victory at least one of those games, despite probably being underdogs for both of those games. But speaking of Motherwell, tough 10 days for them. It started with Coleraine away in the Europa League, won on penalties, and then that was followed up by a brilliant 3-0 win away to Aberdeen. It gave them confidence going into 2 extremely difficult tasks against Hapoel Beersheva and Israel, which would then be followed 72 hours later by a game against Rangers. So it proved after the 3-0 defeat in Israel, Rangers beat Motherwell 5-1, a comprehensive victory for Rangers, and to be honest, they never really had to click into top gear to get a victory. Stephen Robinson, reacting after the game, said it was a step too far for his side.
Rangers were the better side. They didn't have to work very hard for it, I have to be honest. I think when we went 1 goal down, we were beat already. We looked completely jaded. We looked extremely tired, both mentally and physically. We half pressed them at times, and if you half press a team as good as Rangers, they pick you off. So, the penalty early on kills us. I think that's 9 penalties now we've conceded. So it's a statistic that doesn't read very well at all. But listen, we have to deal with it. We got what we deserved today. I can't dwell on it. I think there's a lot of aspects of the game just by a couple of days off, and we get back to our energetic performance that we give against Aberdeen. That's managing Motherwell.
I think if you're Stephen Robinson, the thing that's going to be so disappointing is that he said it himself. After 1 goal, the game was done. You'd have been might as well blowing the full-time whistle. They looked physically knackered in the game, but mentally, any mental fitness they had left completely evaporated from them when James Tavernier scored that penalty.
I thought they looked fairly poor for the very first get-go. The penalty did it sank any hope Motherwell had, sorry. But I think even the kind of 20 minutes or so before that, the game had already kind of started taking the shape it was going to take, and Motherwell were already kind of fighting to keep themselves in the game. I know there's been a bit of controversy about penalties and whatnot, but for me, both Rangers penalties were Stonewall penalties. I think Motherwell should have had one when went down under Kamara's challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even at that, I don't think it would have made a huge amount of difference to the game. Motherwell just weren't at it at all. And to be fair, I think Stephen Robinson's comments after the game were, I don't want to say they were cheap, but I don't think they hold anywhere near as much water given who the opposition were yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Rangers had a bit more room to manoeuvre in terms of bringing quality into their squad, whereas Mull pretty much have young boys to turn to or players who haven't played very much football at all this season. But I mean, it's a testing run. I mean, Mull's squad, if you look at it, with the injuries Mull are carrying as well, just haven't got the capacity to play 4 games in 10 days. There probably isn't a worse opponent Mull could have picked to play than Rangers after the 3 games they'd had. Both, I mean, physically it was testing, but mentally as well. I mean, you had the surreal highs of winning at Pittodrie and winning a penalty shootout in Europe to a pretty, not demoralising defeat in Israel, but a game which they probably felt was a missed opportunity, to then a 5-1 defeat to Rangers. The penalty instance were a talking point. It's been a talking point on the Sunday, I suppose, north and south of the border. You had Eric Dyer, I think, at top in England. His back's to the ball, and it's because it just hits off like his elbow. It was ruled as a penalty. The Markahara one in the first Mull penalty incident for me, I might have, was it Bevis McGabby actually?
Yeah.
The first one is his arm's all the way out here. It's a Stonewall penalty. The first one, Liam Grimshaw's is probably the one that's a bit more arguable for Mull, because his arm isn't as outstretched and it doesn't look deliberate. But the letter of the law these days, if it hits your hand, no matter whether it's deliberate or unintentional, by the letter of the law, it's a penalty. But whilst players and managers respect that rule, I think a lot of people are just completely annoyed by it, because it's going to, I mean, Mull at half-time before, I think now after the 5-1 game, they've conceded 18 goals, and 8 of which are penalties. Now, I'm not saying it's all down to this new handball rule. It's not. But I mean, 4 or 5 of them have been questionable handballs, all because of this new ruling last season. Did they get given? Probably not. But the rule makers have set their ways.
Yeah. I don't know, there's much said about this new handball, but I think it's slightly overplayed a little bit. I do think there is a slight problem with the referee's interpretation of it in Scotland. I think they are a little bit over-eager to be dealing with it, when I don't think all the ones that are being flagged as handballs are handballs. Because I thought, as you mentioned, they've kind of taken it to be that any handball inside the box is a foul regardless, when that's not quite what the rule is. It's still the same for defenders. It's only any contact with an attacker, but referees seem to just have this idea that touches your hand, it's a foul. So we'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if there are changes to the handball rule over the next 12 to 18 months again.
No, I think what it'll take is probably, say it happens in a big game, let's just talk about down, I mean, obviously the big one here is the Old Firm derby. Say down south, it happens in a big game, like tonight as we record this, Arsenal play Liverpool. Say a big decision in that, courtesy of this new handball rule, happens and it defines English title race. I think when it's on a worldwide scale like that is probably when the rule makers will really start to keep up. Because in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to be watching Motherwell and Rangers going, oh, that was an injustice against Motherwell or an injustice against Rangers and Johnstone, whoever it may be.
I know, you say that, but the powers that be that have that decision, it's the four home associations, Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland and FIFA. So you've more chance of it being flagged up due to a controversy in Scottish football than you would virtually anywhere else. Just a small quirk of how football still works with the home nations dominating IFAB.
I think in any case, I think we're stuck with it for this season. Perhaps the first part of the next season as well. But it's a frustrating one for managers because there's not a lot players can do if it does. If the Eric Dyer one, especially, I know it's not Scottish football, but I mean, there is literally nothing he can do to stop that for hitting his hand.
Yeah.
It's not like he's went and saved the ball on the line or anything like that. But anyway, enough.
Yeah, just one last little thing on the handball stuff. And I know I've kind of beaten this one to death in recent weeks. But with all the talk about what is handball, what isn't handball, what should be handball, what shouldn't be handball, Ryan Porteous at St Mirren, not a handball.
Aye, that's the thing as well. It's not like all handball decisions are still being corrected. I mean, there's still really clear and obvious errors, which again brings the VAR debate to the table, which again is ruled out because Scottish football simply does not have the finances to run video at the side of the pitch. But
isn't willing to, not doesn't have the finances, aren't willing to.
Debatable. But we'll move on to talking about Ryan Porteous and Hibs. Celtic 3, Hibs 0. A pretty disappointing day for Hibs. They'd have probably expected a wee bit more. They put up a decent fight in the first half, although they did find themselves 2-0 down at the break. But then the introduction of David Turnbull for Celtic in the second half completely changed it. They completely dominated the midfield from that and eventually got their goal late on in the second half. Hibs never really had much of a chance in that second half to claw back the deficit, but probably one Jack Ross will be slightly disappointed about because they didn't really show that cutting edge they've shown in recent weeks, and defensively as well, I think they were opened up a bit easily a couple of times.
I take it we've now moved on for Ryan Porteous being the best young defender in Scotland.
Well, there was argument there. I don't know if you've seen their third goal, but you probably could say he could have done a bit better with that third goal.
And it's not the only one this season he could have done better.
Still a very young defender. I think he probably still is one of Scotland's best young defenders. I don't think anybody can question that. But it was a learning curve from yesterday against a very strong Celtic side who actually looked decent for the first good 45 minutes they've played. Even though it sounds weird to say that about a team that have pretty much won most games domestically this season, but they did show how when they're on their day, they're just that level above pretty much everybody in this league. But Hibs, it's not one they'll lose too much sleep over. The games they've dropped points in pretty much up to teams in last season's top 6. They've beat everybody else. So it's not all doom and gloom, I don't think, this result for Hibs.
No, they've had a nice quick opportunity to get back to winning ways this week. So yeah, this is largely a free hit for Jack Ross's side this weekend, or last weekend even.
Ross County Aberdeen. This one was Aberdeen perhaps could have had the same complaints sort of the other teams in Europe have had, jaded, etc. But again, no signs of that for Aberdeen. They absolutely stormed to victory against Ross County, and by all accounts it could have been 6 or 7. I think Aberdeen played well, But I think the big thing from what I heard from a lot of people who were at the game and watched the game was that it was more down to the fact Ross County were just had an absolute shocker.
A red card and 2 penalties. There must be something going on with the referees up there. That's how these things go, isn't it? When teams get multiple penalties in games, it must be a conspiracy. Aberdeen, good value for the run. Surprised to see just kind of how poorly Ross County played. Just never clicked for them at all yesterday. So, kind of back to the drawing board for Stuart Kettlewell and his backroom staff. But it's going to be one of these ones that seeing how Ross County respond to this is now going to kind of make or break their season for me. It could have been worse had it come next week. I know they're playing Rangers next Sunday now, it's supposed to be next Friday night, but had they gone into the international / Betfred Cup break on the back of a heavy defeat, they could have kind of seen themselves just struggling that wee bit more to get that momentum back. As it is, albeit they'll take the free hit into the Rangers game next week, but Kettlewell will be looking much more to how his side performs at Ibrox rather than whether they can come away with the 3 points or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was a disappointing one for them. I mean, it was an opportunity against Aberdeen because I've got no doubts that I know they made a couple of changes, but surely somewhere there must have been some tired legs in there.
Yeah.
A lot of the teams that played in Europe, but it was similar to Motherwell last week, I suppose, even though they'd had a testing game in Portugal and for Motherwell away to Kilmarnock, they came back and they looked fit as anything. Same for Aberdeen there. It probably could have been 6 or 7 if they'd taken their chances a bit more, but not to be for them. Still, at the end of the day, good win for them. They'll be fairly pleased heading into next week. But that's all we've got time for on this episode. We hope you have enjoyed. We'll be back during this week for a couple of different types of interviews. We'll have a couple of exclusive interviews, one on the reintroduction of fans to Scottish football, which after this, I think this might be coming out the next day following this episode. So keep an eye out for that. We'll see about that. We're hoping for things to go our way on that one, but we'll keep...
If not Tuesday, we'll have it on Wednesday.
Yes, aye. We're waiting for things to click into place that haven't quite clicked yet, but hopefully it'll be with you in the next couple of days. We'll also have an exclusive interview with a Premier League striker. Don't want to miss that one as well. That'll be out towards the end of this week, as well as our usual previews and reviews. They'll come a bit earlier this week due to the fact games are on the Friday, and then the review will be usual time next Monday. But until next time, take it easy.